Look, I'm unstoppable. Forget your defense, nothing but an obstacle. Run it back, switch it up, call it audible. Serving up them Hail Marys till the game over with the showstopper. So hot, you gotta blow on it. I said I'll huff and I'll puff, then I'll pass to my left while I'm looking to my right. Hit him right in the chest. It be looking like magic. Better give me the throne. I ain't talking about Patrick, but I rep my home. I'm never at the end of my zone. I'm bad to the bone, eating up these pigs.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Texas Fan Battle Podcast. I'm Matthew Briggs. My co-host Crenshaw will be here shortly, but today we got a special guest, former Houston Texans defensive tackle. You can find him on 610 in the morning with Sean Pendergast. I got Mr. Seth Payne.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on again.
Oh man, thank you for coming on. It's such a pleasure. I see you where you're bobbing to the music. You like that?
Yeah, it was a good intro. I got it. That was unexpected. That's better production quality than I get on like a lot of even radio shows. That's
actually my brother-in-law. He made the song for my for this podcast. So
cool.
Shout out to him. But before we jump into some big news, let's jump into what was your most exciting game besides the Texans this week?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if exciting is the right word. I think the Colts all of a sudden looking like they might be rounding into form on offense kind of like pissed me off. I almost said scared me, but it pissed me off that Carson Wentz looked really good and Jonathan Taylor looked really good. Their offensive line looks more like they were supposed to. So that with the combination of Lamar Jackson kind of rounding into form, that was probably the most intriguing game for me. Now, and Lamar Jackson's been rounding into form for the last few weeks, but that's the one that had a relevant team in the AFC plus a team in the AFC South that's at least relevant to the Texans.
I felt like the Texans said, "Look us blow this lead," and then the Colts say, "Here, hold my beer." Do their best impression. I have a friend who's a big Colts fan and big UT Longhorns fan, and man, he was heartbroken with both of them giving up big leads. So
that's I guess if you're looking for hope for the Texans to upset the Colts, you look at the Colts secondary. And the one corner that got victimized, I can't think of his name, in the second half. Like there are opportunities there. Like obviously the Texans are going to be up against it every week, but they showed some of the flaws in the second half that they didn't show in the first half.
Oh, most definitely. So on the opposite of that, what's your most disappointing game?
Oh, most disappointing game.
Besides the Texans.
Let's see. God, that's a really good one. I guess I've been pulling for Cincinnati. I'm almost like I've been thinking about making Cincinnati my alternate AFC team this year because I like Joe Burrow a lot. Mm-hmm. So I guess I mean that was a matter of okay, who's gonna stop shooting themselves in the foot first type of game, and it's a shame that when the opposing kicker misses 18 field goals or so in a game, you can't capitalize on that.
Both of them missed five, right? Something like crazy like that.
It was absolute. Well, and that was kind of the theme around the league. I mean, look at the Texans; their missed extra points.
Everybody was missing them.
Yeah, and penalties, extra points and penalties. That was the theme. But you know what? I saw a stat today. I think it might have been Field Yates that put it out there that there have been more game-winning touchdowns scored in the final minute of games this year, this far into the season than ever before. Like it's been a really good year for exciting NFL games. Yeah,
I can't lie. Like this, I mean, at the beginning, I was saying that because I miss football so much. I was like, oh, man, this is probably the best year of football I've seen in a while. Yeah. But the more every week, I was like, no, it's really good year of football. Like, I mean, you got your teams that's going to suck. But, like the Bengals and Jaguars was actually a real good game,
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, was – however, they got all these stats that show that the quality of play wasn't affected last year and all of that. And I just don't know if I buy it. Because if you look at the Texans, look at the rookies on the Texans that are playing so much better this year. Blacklock, Grenard, and all these guys that just didn't have a full off season and a full training camp as rookies because of COVID. This year they're blossoming, and I think maybe with a lot of the quarterbacks it was that way too. It seems like sharper football, except for the missed field goals.
Right. Well, Crenshaw, thanks for coming. We're talking about most exciting game, so I'll throw it to you right off the bat. What was your most exciting game of this week?
Got to go with the Monday night game, Ravens and the Colts.
Yeah, Seth said the same thing. He
Yeah, man, it was a great game. Lamar, threw for the most passing yards ever as a Raven. A lot of people said he couldn't pass, but he did pretty good. Brought him back. I'm glad he beat the Colts because that's what we play Sunday. So anytime the Colts lose, that's a victory for us. But that was a great game. I mean, I was really, really tuned in. So I got to go with that game right there.
That was, you know what that game was like? It was almost like it was one of those primetime games like Tom Brady, when Tom Brady's down by 3 touchdowns and you can't go to sleep because you know something's about to happen. I was just about to pass out, and then all of a sudden the Colts turned the ball, or there was a huge turnover that made it 22-6. Or when it was 22-6, and then I was up for the night and sleep deprived for the rest of the week.
It also reminded me of that Colts and New England game back in the day in Indy when the Colts made that big comeback. They tried to go for it on 4th down, and they stopped them, and they won with the Super Bowl. So I remember that game as well.
Yeah.
So obviously what's your most disappointing game?
Most disappointing game, I got to go with the Raiders, man. Got to go with the Raiders. I thought it was going to come in and beat the Bears, but it's like they're coming back down to earth. The last 2 years, they started off 6-3 and couldn't make the playoffs. It seemed like this year is going to be the same deal. Of course, you got the coach with his scandals going on.
I'd say perfect segue. Perfect.
Yeah. I think the team was about to fall apart. I feel like they're about to clean house. I can see Derek Carr, they're cutting him next offseason. That might be a guy Texans might could look into, got Houston Tides and everything. But I got to go with that game right there.
Yeah, like I said, perfect segue. So breaking news, John Gruden released he didn't release a whole bunch of emails. A lot of emails were found against him. Racial, homophobic slurs. I mean, you name it, he probably said it, probably did it. Topless cheerleader photos, like it. I mean, it seems like it's a soap opera story to tell you. It's crazy. The Buccaneers released a statement, I believe, yesterday, saying that they were going to remove him from Buccaneer history, the Ring of Honor. This asterisk. Seth, since you're in that type of industry, how big is this? Like how does it affect?
Look, I mean, obviously there's huge ramifications. And I think you see a lot of people right now. I told my co-host on the radio this morning, Sean Pendergast, this is obviously a much more serious situation because it involves racial dynamics, it involves women's rights and LGBTQ rights and all that. But in terms of kind of a whole bunch of people around the league maybe wondering what their emails were like 10 years ago. It reminds me of do you remember when Ashley Madison, the client list was leaked? And it was like, because Ashley Madison was this website of all for married couples to cheat. And the name list was released, and you just could envision all these people that must have been sweating bullets trying to figure out if their name was on that list or not. Look, I don't think it would be a huge surprise to people that certain people talk that way or email that way. I think it's when it's somebody in such a position of power, especially in a sport where, look, John Gruden's been working with black athletes for 30 years at least, and with black coaches, black management. D. Smith, the coordinator, or the NFLPA president. I think that's the part that Brandon Staley put it really well today when he talked about how the real threat and the danger and the harm that's done there is that it makes everybody wonder. Like anybody that was affected by that email, any marginalized group or any whether it's black, gay, women in business or what have you, it violates the trust that they would have for any 48-year-old white guy, and it's understandable. And I guess it's like, for me, I think it's important to just try to counteract that somehow, some way, in your own little way, and try to be somebody that's actually building trust and trying to build bridges instead of being that guy. And the other thing too is it's hard to talk about this topic just because whenever you start to get into any of the side topics, the secondary or the tertiary topics about it, all of a sudden it sounds like you're defending John Cruden. I guess that's probably the hard part, because you know how it is on Twitter or anywhere else these days. It's hard to have the conversation without somebody jumping in and assuming you're saying something or without really fleshing it out.
Right. And yesterday I seen that the NFLPA also they got it approved to be all the 650,000 emails released, correct? So I mean,
yeah, 650,000.
That's going to be interesting to see, especially on the Washington football team side. You know, I seen that Adam Schefter kind of in some hot water right now too. So it's just like, it seems like the snowball kind of going down the hill, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know. Look at Schefter, as far as I understand, it's funny because usually I go to like Pro Football Talk and ESPN.com for the major news. And when I was clicking on ESPN.com, they didn't have much about Schefter about it. So I haven't, but now, to be clear, right, Schefter's was about him asking for Bruce Allen to fact check a story he wrote. It wasn't like there's any racist or sexist stuff that Schefter said, right?
It was about all the allegations that was going on, you know, because they've been facing a lot of it. And he pretty much told him, you know, what do you want me to leave out? What do you want me to put? And I believe he called him Mr. Editor. So
really, jeez, wow, jeez.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. Does that surprise you guys at all? I mean, I don't. I'm not a journalist. You know, I'm a sports radio guy, but I know enough just from working with journalists that it's considered really bad form to just go ahead and give the subject of an article, the entire article. You know, you might call them to check some facts and be sure that you got some things right. But like basically you're allowing Bruce Allen to be the editor instead of the subject of the article.
Right. I mean, you got to get your truth out there. And sometimes, you know, the truth doesn't always fit the story, you know. Crenshaw, what do you think about all this?
Well, it's a sensitive subject to me because I have a gay sister and everything. So it really hits home with me on that. I think he did the right thing to resign because he's already going to lose that locker room regardless of what's going to happen. So that's how I feel about it. You know, I want to talk too much about it. I might say something I shouldn't have to say and everything.
Right.
I know, but that's a hard thing, isn't it? Like it's good. It's hard, but it's also good. I mean, honestly, for the last 2 years, I've been more careful about what I say, and it's not out of any paranoia or anything. It's that I think I've learned a lot about where my blind spots are and where maybe I used to think I was more enlightened than I was. I've learned I had a blind spot here and a blind spot there. And you worry that you're gonna, like, I genuinely worry that I'm gonna say the wrong thing in a way that's hurtful or harmful to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you got to have the conversation to get to that point, you know?
True.
I talked to a Texans player last year who, because I told him, this is a younger guy, and I told him, you know, I was really impressed by the way guys in the league handled everything over the last year when it came to discussions about race and after George Floyd, and it just seemed to me like there was more open dialogue amongst guys about really serious topics than there was when I was a player. And he felt the same way. So this is a white guy I was talking to, and he said that, you know, he'd had conversations with teammates that he never had before in the course of decades playing football. And see, I'm calling him a young guy. He's actually an older guy in the league, but he's young to me. And I think that that part's good, but those conversations mostly are still done in private, and then somebody tweets something, and then it gets dissected 400,000 different ways. But I think they did make a lot of progress in some respects, or at least from guys I've talked to, a lot of conversations have been had that weren't being had before.
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's a touchy subject because you don't want to say the wrong thing to affect one person. You don't want to say the wrong thing to make another mad. It's just the era we live in now is just it's hard. It's hard, and in this type of industry, it's hard to say what you want. Like I said, I'm not trying to defend John Gruden because I think it's disgusting of everything that came to light. So touchy subject, very very touchy.
Well, it's tough because I think there is a natural tendency, and you think about when it comes to homophobia, the way that we talked when we were teenagers, sorry, I'm saying we like you guys. I'll say myself, the way I talked as a teenager, I would be I would be furious if I heard my teenager talking that way. Because we've learned a lot over the years, I think. And I guess the difference with Gruden, if you get past the whole topic of, the emails being disclosed and everything, was that he was a 48-year-old guy, and he'd been working in a high profile position for a long time. Like, youthful ignorance isn't really an excuse. And that's I guess that's the difference perhaps between, somebody that talked a certain way in the 70s or talked a certain way in the 90s and a guy that was 48 years old and it was 2011, 2012.
Right. I mean, I'm not condoning what he said or anything like that, but like Bob McNair said years ago, about the whole inmates running the prison. Some things you just can't say no more. And you just, especially on the public platform, it is not very good. So moving on to kind of Texan news. Lonnie Johnson made a tweet out earlier this week, pretty much saying you're about to see some fireworks. Seth, what can you think of these fireworks? What
I think he was talking about the Gruden stuff, unless I missed one, because I think the last cryptic one that he had was before Gruden was fired, but I might not be. But let's say it wasn't that. The biggest thing that I wondered about or assumed that it would be about was either it was either going to be Zach Cunningham or Charles Omenihu. I just figured those are the two guys that have been at odds with the coaching staff for whatever reason. Zach Cunningham was benched for a quarter in the Cleveland game for disciplinary reasons. He was missing during camp earlier in the year, and then Cunningham just being inactive last week, despite being one of the more active, more productive defensive linemen. Right. Those are the two guys that I would guess would either have reason to be disgruntled. Omenihu's had some cryptic tweets himself. So that's what I assumed it was about if it wasn't about, or that's what I guessed it was about if it wasn't about John Gruden.
Crenshaw, what do you think? You think it's going to be a trade?
I think it's a trade. But Lonnie, he talks a lot on Twitter. So who knows with him? But I think it's going to be a trade. I think they're going to find a way to get him out of there. I mean, the safety position is crowded, but I mean, the guy that can replace him is no better than him. So I would like to hold on to the guy because we spent the second round pick on him, but we tried him at DB. Now we got him back at safety, and I don't think it's processing in his mind on what to do. But I mean, he hits hard. So to say that, I mean, maybe he's going to come on slow like Kareem Jackson. I mean, back in the day, we all rolled him. He couldn't defend nobody. He couldn't turn his head around. And all of a sudden now he's an all-pro safety. So maybe he's a late bloomer.
Yeah, the thing I wonder with Lonnie is, for one, he's still learning how to play safety, and it's a different scheme this year than it was last year, obviously. And when they have him playing as deep as he is, That's Ed Reed territory where you've got to close that distance by being super smart and anticipating and reading route combos and all that stuff and knowing your tendencies. And I think that's going to take a little while for him to do that. And he's shown flashes where he can do some stuff that a lot of other safeties can't do. But the problem is some of the bad stuff just doesn't show up on the tape immediately because he's just out of position, or it looks like the linebacker's screwing up, but it's actually because he's supposed to be there. Those are the things that I think they're going to give him the entire year to figure it out. But I think if somebody came along, I think he's definitely. I would guess there's everybody except for like 3 or 4 guys on the team right now would be traded for the right price.
Okay. Well, so going from news, let's go to the game. But the Patriots at NRG had a very good lead, and I was talking to my buddy during the game, and when we did that god awful 4th down fake punt, you want to call it, he texted me. He said, "Man, this has a Kansas City vibe all over again." I was like, "Oh man, get out of here! No way!" Sure enough, ended up blowing the lead. Crenshaw, tell me what was your text of the game? Highs, lows. What are you talking about?
Well, we started off good. I mean, had the longest drive I think since 2011. I mean, Mills. I mean, he was looking great. It's almost like they wanted to lose the game later on because the coach didn't make any adjustments after halftime. Special teams played a huge part, but I feel like coach, this is the 5th week in a row he had to apologize for something that he's done. So that's the part about coach that I'm not liking so far. Like, he got to apologize week after week. I understand he's learning on the job, but he got to do better. Like the kicker, if he was still injured, they should have kept him out because he definitely didn't look good. I mean, he's never missed that many kicks before. And then the 56-yard field goal, why he must put him out there if he knew the guy couldn't make the other ones? So that's another questionable call. But I like what Mills did. I hope he could continue this Sunday. He finally turning his head, stop staring down one player. I mean, it's more than Brandon Cook on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know Chris Conley still was on the team when he caught the touchdown. I'm like, oh, okay, he's finally catching the ball now. But I just wish they would have closed it. But, I feel like I say, coaches gave the game away. He need to do better. But, hey, we show promise. Hopefully we could get a dub this Sunday.
So, do you, Seth, what was your take on the game? I mean,
I think the biggest and most important takeaway was, like Chris said, that Davis Mills showed a level that he hadn't shown before, and especially to Conley and to Chris Moore. I think finding those guys after they'd been MIA. Well, one was down on the practice squad forever. Being able to make those reads and find those guys on the run after he'd been flushed out, and really do it with some arm talent that I don't think he'd shown even really in practice when I was there during training camp. During training camp, in practice, and then in the preseason, he looked very mechanical. It looked like he was like a paint by numbers type of guy that just wasn't going to feel the game and wasn't going to let the game come to him. So I think more than anything, like above and beyond any statistics or any one specific play in that game, he looked more like he was feeling the game. And then he showed that touch on the sideline. That pass to Chris Moore, the first couple times I watched it, I thought it was a little bit of a prayer. And then you realize, no, he was taking a calculated shot where it was either going to be Chris Moore was going to catch it or it was going to go out of bounds. And it took a little bit of luck for McCourty to overrun Moore for it to become a touchdown. But it was just a hell of a throw. If he'd been tackled right there, that was just still a hell of a play. So I was excited about that. The part I was disappointed in was that the Texans pass rush didn't get home more often versus 4 backup offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I thought now in Blacklock being in there might have made a difference. So hopefully they'll get him back. But I've been encouraged that a lot of the young guys like Grenard and Blacklock are showing up. And Lopez is showing way more pass rush ability than I thought he had. I thought he was going to be more of like a pure run stuffer. I'd like
To
to see that.
me, he's probably the bright spot of the draft so far. Like he's a very underrated guy that has went under the radar.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Nico Collins will be hopefully he's the other guy that doesn't fly under the radar, but when he comes back this week, if he can get a bunch more targets and be a find, and if Davis Mills looks like, I'll be happy with Davis Mills if he's a guy that you keep wanting to see more of week after week. I don't know what his ceiling is right now, but at least he looks like he's developing. He looks like he might be this guy that, if he had stayed in college another year, he would have gone higher in the draft. So that part was a positive for last week.
Well, I got a question for you, Seth. So if Davis shows promise this year, do you ride with him next year, or you still draft a quarterback?
That's the $1 million question, man. I think it's gonna depend on how good he is, and then what these guys think about either Matt Corral or Malik Willis. I mean, it's hard for me right now to watch Malik Willis and not want Malik Willis on the team. And I don't even know. I mean, like obviously, this is a guy that couldn't crack the second string at Auburn, but sometimes that happens. Joe Burrow couldn't be a starter, and then he found the right spot and it clicked for him. But you can't teach some of the things that kid does athletically and with his arm. So Davis Mills would have to look real impressive for me not to potentially get excited about one of these guys. I'm not all that hot on any of the other prospects. I like Matt Corral as a kid, but Malik Willis is the one that really tweaks the imagination.
Yeah, see, I agree with you. I think Malik Willis is probably the only one is like must have. The other guys are just like, So, I mean, I kind of agree with you. Like, maybe you take a chance on Davis Mills next year and, build up draft picks. And then that whole year, if he tanks, go after another quarterback.
This is the hard thing, too. And this is where it doesn't make any rational sense. This is all emotion and maybe like a little bit of just remembering my own playing career. I also want Tyrod Taylor to get a shot. He was playing so well. But the problem is that he could probably help the Texans win a few more games. And I don't know if I'm torn, man. I'm in that spot right now where I know what's best for them long term, and I want them to compete. But I also don't want them all of a sudden be 14th or 15th in the draft. I don't want them to tank. I don't want Tyrod to come back in and play so well that they win 6 or 7 games.
Right. Yeah, my take, the coaching mistakes cost us a lot in that game. But to me, it was like the whole year I've been playing the second half on defense. I've been blaming, except for, of course, the Jags, I've been blaming the offense. The offense was poor, couldn't stay on the field, so tired of the defense. Well, this week was complete opposite, and the defense to me, they disappeared in the second half. I mean, they were gassing them on the running. Mac Jones was doing Mac Jones, and I mean, he looked a lot better in the second half. So coming from a new, you done it when you went from the Jaguars to the Texans, coming into a new scheme. Is it hard for these guys to adjust and stay on the field during the whole game?
It's hard, but then it's also, they're playing a ton of cover 2, which has a whole bunch of holes in the middle, unless you got some real genuine stud linebackers and stud safeties and a stud pass rusher. Like it's a scheme that to play well, you need really good talent out there. You need some Brian Urlachers, you need some Peanut Tillmans, you need guys like that. And I think so far for me, I said at the beginning of the year, I'd be happy if these guys ended up being a middle of the road defense. That would be a huge step forward for me. And so far, if you look at DVOA and a lot of the other stuff, even points allowed and whatnot, they're in there, between 15th and 20th or so defensively. I think that's probably going to be their ceiling this year just because they don't have that much talent. The question will be if they can get a stud pass rusher in there next year, if they can get a linebacker that's a true 3-down linebacker somewhere along the way and a stud safety or something. That's going to be that'll be the tough decision is, okay, are we going to stick with Lovie Smith 2-3 years from now? So far this year, I'm cutting him a lot of slack because he doesn't have much to work with. Like blitzing would be really tough with the corners. Yeah.
I'm impressed by it. I've been telling Crenshaw this whole season, like I'm hyped about this defense. Yeah, you're right. They do give big holes, but I mean, it's a lot better than seeing them give the receivers 20-yard. Let's sit back here 20 yards off and let the receiver have their way with us. So it's good. And you also mentioned Peanut Tillman, Terrence Mitchell. Man, he's been doing his best impersonation of him this all year. That was a good in the end zone fumble.
Yeah, that was, if that was more of a marquee game and people had cared about it, and especially if the Texans had won, that'd be one of the plays of the year. I mean, you force a fumble on the 3-centimeter line. I mean, that was really good. Yeah.
So before we talk Colts and end the show, that last play, well, not last play, but leading into the last drive for the Patriots, was that roughing the passer?
Oh, yeah, it was. I guess.
You think so? Really?
Yeah. It was. The problem was it was helmet to helmet contact, but it was so brief and it was so glancing that I think I was surprised that they called it when Mac Mills was the quarterback that was getting hit. I felt like if it was Brady or somebody like that or a more established quarterback that they would have called it. So I was kind of surprised. But the other thing too is that's Malik Collins' third roughing the passer. I don't want to cut him any breaks because the first two that he had this year were kind of blatant and like obvious. So I'm not a fan of the way they're calling it, but given the letter of the law and everything and what the rule is, then it was a penalty.
Yeah, I think too, like you say, if it was Brady or Rodgers, they'll definitely call it. But I also think they called it because who was on the other sideline?
Yeah, didn't matter who was underneath the helmet. It was a Patriots helmet.
Right. Yeah. Right. So moving on, going to Indianapolis, we're playing the other 1-4 choke artist teams in the AFC South. We're playing the Indianapolis Colts. Crenshaw, again, I'll start with you. What do you expect? What's your predictions?
Well, our record in Indy is not good over the years, but I'm going to go in right now and say we're going to win that game. I feel like, man. I feel like Indy, they're done already. The Carson Wentz thing hasn't been a good look. I think this might be Frank's last year as well. I could see the DC maybe take over as head coach, or he could be out of there as well. I don't know. But I got us winning that game. I want to go 24-17.
Okay.
That's how I appreciate that, Chris. That's bold. I'll flip those scores and say the Colts will win 24-17. I cannot get out of my brain the times, two different things that the Colts were able to do to a young Deshaun Watson before he figured it out. One was the DB blitzes off the edge. Yes. And two is linebackers popping up into zones or lurking and making the quarterback think that it's man when it's zone and vice versa. And I see Eberflus scheming that up versus a young Davis Mills. So those are the two things that make me nervous from Davis Mills' perspective. Is this might be the week where they saw Davis do some good things last week. They might be a little bit more aggressive and sending some blitz than they might otherwise be. And those DBs, those safeties and corners careening off the edge is what makes me nervous.
So they're gonna do what Carolina did on Thursday night, just start blitzing them, right?
Yeah, and just confusing. Well, especially too now you're gonna have Charlie Heck at right tackle, you're gonna have John Christian at left tackle. So that's man, I hadn't even been thinking about that yet. I'm still processing this. Damn it! All right, I might have to say 27-17.
But you're right. They are gonna start blitzing, but the good thing is, there's not a short turnaround for Mills. He has a whole week, and he's seen more gameplay. So hopefully, Pep Hamilton he's a good quarterback coach. So hopefully, he's in the ear. Is Tyrod, is he suiting up Sunday or?
I don't think he's going to. And it was interesting today. We spoke to Nick Caserio this morning, and we asked him about when Tyrod comes back, how are they going to handle it? And Caserio gave kind of a diplomatic answer and said, hey, they evaluate everybody all the time. And he didn't guarantee that Tyrod would be starting when he came back. Then 2 hours later, Culley in his press conference said he's old school. He believes in veterans not losing their job because of injuries. So it's his job when Tyrod comes back. And I'm not going to try to create drama out of it. They'll figure it out. But I mean, he does work for a team that's run by people from the Patriots, where Tom Brady got his job due to injury. So I think Culley, if he wants to, would win that battle. But it seems like Culley's trying to Caserio would win that battle, I think. But Caserio, I think more so than people think, I think he is trying to let Culley make a lot more decisions than people realize. It's just a matter of when push comes to shove with this bigger stuff, Caserio's got the power.
Right. Well, I was wondering because, I mean, maybe in the second half or first half, Mills is struggling. They're down. Maybe they put Tyrod and Tyrod does Tyrod and make a comeback. You never know.
Yeah.
But a hamstring injury is nothing to play with.
It might end up being kind of like it was with Tua and Fitzpatrick, where they just kind of they don't have to play by the standard rules, and they just give Mills a spell if he needs it because things get overwhelming.
Well, Culley was there when the Ravens ran Jackson and RG3. Who knows?
Yeah.
You might put both of them in there. I mean, I don't see it doing anything like it did for them, but who knows? I gotta agree with Seth. Earlier this year, I thought the Colts were going to sweep us, but I think we're going to now seeing how terrible the Colts are just because of injuries and not meshing well. I say we split it, but I think we lose here in Indianapolis and then win at home December 5th. I think it's going to be 24-17 type of game too. This is really close, almost in it, but just kind of like Sunday, just couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I feel way more optimistic about the Texans and Davis Mills, especially at home this year. And I do think, look, they've been more competitive in a couple of these games than anybody thought they would be, and I think they're a team that probably will improve a good chunk. So we'll have some good entertaining games here along the way.
Well, if you look at it like Jacksonville, Detroit, New York Jets, the team that with new regimes and new coaches and all that, there's only really like good two teams that kind of the Texans. I'm not trying to be biased, but the Texans are doing it right. They're getting the pieces to help these rookie guys, these young players develop. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville, they're too busy getting lap dances and finger popping women's buttholes, So, I mean, am I wrong, or is that the way it seems with the Texans? I mean, they're help developing.
I think that I think Culley's done a good job running a tight ship for the most part. I mean, it is what it is in terms of the talent that he's working with. But all through training camp, the first couple of weeks especially, I was really impressed with how smooth and efficient everything was. So look, his game management is garbage so far, but he's got a lot of veteran guys, and the young guys seem to be learning how to operate like professionals. And there's not a whole lot of drama outside of the whole Deshaun situation, and then the random guys that like to go off on Twitter every now and then. I've been impressed with that part of Culley's operation.
I mean, I like what Nick Caserio is doing. I mean, he's not breaking the bank, going after these these veterans. He's getting league minimums, 1 year prove it deals. So to me, I think it's a smart move on both sides of the board. So before we sign off, Crenshaw, is there a question you'd like to ask Seth before we let him go?
Yeah. When we got you in the draft, you, Tony, and Gary, didn't you guys have a conversation that day?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's a really good question. Man, I haven't thought back to that day in a long time. It was interesting because we knew that Baselli's shoulder was in pretty rough shape, and Tony was kind of had his own set of challenges. right then because of his shoulder. Gary and I talked a lot more just because we were kind of veteran leaders on the defense, and it probably pushed Gary and I a lot closer together than we had been when we were in Jacksonville, just because we were in that situation. So we would, I think I leaned on Gary sometimes for advice on just how to operate, because he's a couple years older than me. And we were able to, we had conversations with Dom about how to handle younger guys. So Gary and I talked a lot about the actual team and leadership and stuff like that. But yeah, we never like huddled together in a group of three. We kind of knew the deal. That whole year in Jacksonville, we knew we were going to have cap trouble the next year. So everybody knew that a few of us might end up in Houston. And it was almost like a lot of the conversations had already been had before the expansion draft.
Yeah, that's I didn't think about that too, but that's a pretty good question.
And you know what? I'll have to think about it. I might have to call up Tony or Gary and figure it out too, and relive the actual. One of the weirdest things that I remember from that expansion draft day was that was the first time in my life I'd ever seen, heard of, or eaten a kolache, and I had no idea it was going to be a love affair that lasted 20 years.
Well, I hope you got the kolache from Shipley's.
It was what was it? No, I think it was Kolache Factory back then.
Okay, Kolache Factory. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're anymore. They're gone right now, and it's just Sipley's or Kolache Factory still.
No, factory's still here.
Is it?
Yeah.
I moved up here in Kansas City, and I say, "You have a kolache?" They're like, "What's that?" And
I was crazy when I told the guys in Houston. We were like in a little waiting area, and one of the Texans employees was like a Houston native, and I told him I'd never heard of a kolache. He thought I was crazy, but it's not. Yeah, it's just this region. It's like the Czechs brought it over, and it didn't go anywhere else. It just stayed right here.
And thanks to Patrick Mahomes, I finally get a Whataburger up here.
Yeah, like, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. I mean, I can't stand you for beating the Texans, but thank you for Whataburger.
That's funny.
So Seth, before we leave, where can you find us? Tell us where check you out in the mornings and social media.
Sports Radio 610 AM from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. weekdays, and then any of my social media is all at Seth C. Payne. So Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah, we love having Seth. Well, of course you, Seth, but your partner Sean, he's always a hoot, especially his story about Kevin Costner pinching his nipple. It's a great one. Crenshaw, where can we find you at?
You can find me at Fifth Ward Crenshaw on Twitter.
All right, and once again, I can't change my name. You can find me at HOUSTON Texans Fan. You can find the podcast at Texans Fan Battle everywhere. You can also find our sister podcast, the AFC South Fan Battle podcast. And you can find all of our episodes on every major platform and also on the Pigskin Podcast Network, which is sponsored by DraftKings. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code TPPN. Throw down $1 on any NFL game or fantasy app, and you can win $100 free in bets. So if you want free money, all you got to do is add. I say free, but you got to add $1. Okay, so don't try to put it in there and get it free and get mad at me when you don't get free money. So. Till then, Seth, again, thank you for coming on. Hopefully we'll do this again. It's been fun.
Hey, yeah, my pleasure, guys.
And
appreciate it.
Hopefully next week we talk about win. Until then, have a good week.
Thanks,
have a good
guys.
one.